Yay!
I wanted to say it.
Yay! 20. All right, now on to the important stuff, answering your questions.
Yes. Hey, I'm Kat, the dog trainer.
And I'm the guy with the pink gun, and I want to start today's YAWA.
No, I want to start today's YAWA by saying thank you guys for all of your subscriptions. We've hit 20,000 subscribers, which is awesome. We couldn't do that without you guys. We had a great time at vacation, and we're again overwhelmed by the number of questions we got. Just scrolling through probably at least 80 or more questions again.
We love it. Keep it coming. Each week, we'll keep coming back to you with more answers.
Yep, and we'll try and get to as many as we can.
To start with, Bodette 3. Puppy, not super food motivated, tried kibble, treats, even hot dog and cheese. Help. So the big thing for us, and you see us utilize this a lot, is we use the dog's food, their meal each day as their training session. And a couple things that does is actually develops really good work ethic, as well as develops good eating behavior and desire to work for food. Now, the key to that is if you start your training session, and this is where a smidgen of tough love comes in, you start your training session and the puppy is not interested, you skip that meal, come back to it in the evening. This is the same way that I was raised. If I chose as a child not to eat my oatmeal, Mom made oatmeal, she poured this cold milk moat around a blob of oatmeal and put cinnamon sugar. It was disgusting. I hated it. But if I chose not to eat that for breakfast, I had to eat it for lunch. So we apply that same concept with puppies. It will only take 1 or 2 meals and she'll be very focused and ready to eat. So give that a try. Let us know how it goes.
Next question from JYH.Chang. Best mental stimulation activities for GSPs that don't hunt. Well, first of all, mental stimulation is important, but also physical activity is also going to be important. These dogs are sporting breeds, working dogs. They need a job. They need something to do. So if you don't hunt, that has to be something else, whether that's hiking and adventure trails, dock diving, obedience, agility. All of those things are great activities to become involved in with your dog. Other things on a regular day-to-day basis is teaching them new tricks. Dogs are very intelligent. Short hairs especially are very intelligent. You can teach them a plethora of activities that they can do, from shake and roll over, lay down, play dead, all of the parlor trick type things, as well as we like to use treadmill time, even with the dogs that do hunt, as a combination of both mental and physical stimulation, because you can set a lot of those treadmills to interval training programs where the incline changes and the speed changes, and your dog has to constantly be thinking as well as physically working to stay on that treadmill. So
yeah, because you can, every time it changes speeds, they have to adjust their speed, so it requires a lot of mental focus. CDNBALOO, what is the one dog that stands out for each of you, the dog that fueled the passion? This is a really good question. So it's hard to say one dog. It's really hard to say one dog, and I'm gonna have to say 2. One, first of all, would be my first short hair. Her name was Sammy.
Crazy Sammy.
Lovingly referred to her as Crazy Sammy. And she was, I mean, granted, I didn't know everything when I got her. I practically knew nothing when we got her. But
we made all the mistakes with her.
Most all of them.
The common mistakes.
Yeah, and that's why we love answering these questions for y'all, because though some people say, oh, that's a dumb question. Well, there's no such thing as dumb question, because we already been there, done that.
Yeah.
But Sammy would be a big kickstart to that, because when you have a difficult dog or you have a dog that challenges you, you learn way more from that than you do an easy dog. And she was definitely a challenge. Now, fast forward from that to our next dog. Well, it wasn't even our next dog, but it was the next dog that would stand out. was Shooter 1. And I say Shooter 1 because we now have another Shooter. And
never, ever, ever will we repeat dog names again, even though he unfortunately passed away at a young age. We loved the name. We wanted to reuse it, but it causes a lot of confusion.
Trying to explain dogs and stories. So Shooter 1 was really, really, really a special dog. He also was a little bit challenging. You know, he wasn't by any means perfect, but he had the drive and the desire and the
trainability, wanted to work,
do all of it. And he did some, you know, that took me from the level of going, wow, I can have fun with short hairs and I can teach a short hair something, to with a good one, we can do a lot. And that, you know, really solidified for me that short hairs have everything that I need for them, everything that I need out of a hunting dog. So those would be my two. It would be Sammy, and then Shooter 1.
And then my turn, I would say probably my boy Nix, which is actually Shooter 1's brother from a different litter, but also completely different dogs, even though they are technically litter mates, but they have a lot of similar characteristics, but also a lot of differences. And I would say that he was what fueled my passion, because he was the first dog that I completely trained start to finish. I made all the mistakes. I won't segue into that story, but if you want to know more, ask me about the beeper collar on another YAWA.
Yeah, anybody that wants to hear that story or Shooter 1's story, throw it in the comments. If you guys want to hear it, we'll tell it next time.
But he would be what fueled my passion, because he was also very natural with everything, but he pushes buttons and is a little bit of a pushy dog. So I had to adjust the way that I trained and that I like to do things. And I really tried to learn from my mistakes for the next dogs that we've worked with. But definitely he would be the dog that fueled my passion.
That's a great answer. It's a great question. It's a really great question. Will an energetic older dog in the house have an effect on my new hunting puppy's training? This is from Wesserkerman. As for if I'm understanding this right, you have an older dog that's energetic and you have a new puppy that you're starting to begin training. I would assume by the fact that you're asking this that you're not 100% happy with the energetic dog, or you wouldn't be worried about that rubbing off on your puppy. The key to that would be anything your dog is doing, they're conditioning themselves to, so it may be good for both of them to learn some more manners together.
That's what I was just gonna say. You can always teach an older dog new tricks. Sometimes it just takes longer, but it sounds like your older dog would benefit from some of the basic beginning obedience training that your young puppy would. It would just be important to separate training sessions. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of confusion, especially when you're clicker training to begin with, because the clicker, like we've said in a lot of our other training videos, it not only marks the behavior you're looking for, but it ends the behavior you're looking for. So if you're trying to get your puppy to sit and your older dog sits, well, you click to mark that, and then your puppy's like, well, you just clicked, so I must have done it right. It would just add a lot of confusion. So you need to separate those training sessions. But they can interact with each other on a non-training basis.
Yep. One side note with interaction, because we've been asked this question before, and I'll touch on it quickly, about dogs playing, roughhousing, messing around. And the biggest thing for us with that is, again, anything your dogs are doing, they're conditioning themselves to. And I actually bring a lot of things into, here's my short answer, a lot of things into how we train and develop and raise dogs the way that I was raised as a kid. And it seems kind of silly, but when we were kids, I have 3 other brothers. We were not allowed to roughhouse and have a bunch of shenanigans inside. You know, I mean, it was, if we wanted to wrestle, something was gonna get broken, mom was gonna get pissed, and so it was take it outside. You know, I mean, that's the kind of mentality, and we do that with our dogs, same way. I don't want dogs bouncing off the wall, jumping off the couch, pinging around the house like a bunch of hooligans. So inside, we don't allow that roughhousing, playing, romping. Outside, romping is fine as long as it doesn't get carried away. You kind of have to pay attention to that because it can.
Things like that can escalate quickly.
Yep. So anything you want them to do, basically they're conditioning that, and the best thing to condition is calm, chill dogs, both of the puppy and the older dog in the house. let them play outside. Next question.
From Bethany Starr. This was a good one, and I was excited to kind of answer it. Any advice on how to include children in training sessions? I have a 3-year-old son who loves to be doing whatever we are doing with the dogs, and I'd love to hear your advice or how you plan to get Aiden involved once he's older and interested. Second part, which kind of segues with this, is other than reinforcement by yourself, how is the best way to teach your dog to respect commands from a young child? So, first of all, obviously, your child needs to be old enough to give cues. Aiden can say a few words, but mostly we just understand what he's saying. There's no way the dogs would understand what he's saying at this point yet.
But he's already incorporated in training, especially with the young puppies. We've taught him how to tell them basically no and push them away if they're trying to jump on him
lick
or
his face. And
anything he doesn't want. He just can say no and push them away, even at this young of an age. So that is a small way to incorporate that.
As well as we also teach him the proper way to interact with the dogs, touching nice, not pulling on their faces or their ears, and petting nicely. So not only are we training the dogs how to interact with him properly, but also him how to interact with the dogs properly. That's important.
Fast forward to him getting older, can actually do real training sessions.
Yes. In that situation, I would just be having him ask the dogs and rewarding the dogs with treats and the clicker, and explain to him how to use it. A lot of times I refer to the same things that we're doing with Aiden, similarly to what we train with the dogs, training children, training dogs, kind of the same thing.
Pretty close.
But having this expectation that if I ask him to do something to teach the dog how to sit, or even if he's not technically teaching the dog, but just repping some obedience, if he's not going to do it properly, then he's not going to be able to be involved in the training. And I'll just say, no, Aiden, that's not how we ask him to sit, or that's not how we, feed him treats. That's not how we do that. And then he just doesn't get to be involved in it. We're big proponents of consequences actually have consequences. So if he can't do it right and he wants to be involved in training and he's being obstinate about it, he just won't get to be involved. And then the next opportunity he gets, we're hoping that he will have a positive outlook on that interaction. But no, you don't necessarily want to step in and reinforce for your child with the dog. So if your child asks the dog to sit, but the dog's not sitting, and you just step in and say sit, well, the dog's still not respecting your child's cues. They need to, so I would just give Aiden direction. Nope, you need to, put your hand up high, you need to step into them, or, you need to say it clearer, or you need to be more firm with your command or your cue. We like to use the word cue, and just try and teach him how to actually rep the dog. As he would get older, I would expect him to be able to actually teach some things, but at 3, it would be more of a repping obedience that the dog already knows. So having a dog that is really obedient and really conditioned to those behaviors would be a really good starting point, because then when your son or your child asks for those behaviors, the dog is already super conditioned to those behaviors, and that can give your child confidence that the dog's gonna do when they ask for that behavior.
Pals88 on Instagram, and there was one other person. We'll try and so what are my thoughts on snake avoidance training? We live in Idaho. First of all, snake avoidance training, if you're going to be in an area where there are a lot of snakes, you're guaranteed you're going to be running into snakes. It's important. If you're not, or maybe there's a chance of 1 or 2 snakes a season, I don't believe it's as important. I have never done snake avoidance training with any of our dogs, because the majority of the places that we're hunting and the times of year that we're actually hunting there is a pretty small chance of running into snakes, rattlesnakes, whatever. Now, when we lived in Northwest Kansas, I think in the 4 or 5 years that we were there, we probably killed 15 total rattlesnakes. So we're talking 3 or 4 a year. Most of those were on the road. I would say maybe 3 of them were actually in the field while we were out training dogs or working dogs. Now, because we didn't do any snake avoidance training, our dogs didn't know at all what a snake was. They paid 0 attention, including the dogs that we had in for training. I can remember one morning specifically that we made loops. We generally make a loop in training when we're working birds, and there'd be one here, 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 and then you're kind of worked back to the truck. It's more efficient that way. And then you can back set or plant birds as you're going. So we work through and work through and work through, and we get to about the fourth dog, and we're running through these same areas where we've got bird launchers out, and then bzzz, I hear a snake. Now, I had 2 dogs on the ground, and they just ran right past where the snake was and had no idea that it was there, nor paid any attention to it. Kat was with me. She grabbed the dogs. I dispatched the snake. We moved on. It was, that was the way that all of our snake encounters went. The very first morning that we ran into one, we had a bigger group on a big exercise run, and a herd of dogs ran right through. Nobody paid any attention to the snake. Now, all of that being said, we've got the opportunity, and if you follow along with our social media stuff, you're going to see a lot more about this coming up. But we're going to be going to Hell's Canyon in Idaho, where you're talking about, and we'll be there September timeframe. They said, yes, there will be snakes. Yes, we will most likely run into some. So I will be doing snake avoidance training with at least a couple dogs that we're planning on bringing with us. So in that, you have a few things: scent, sight, and smell. And we will work through that, and we'll actually put a video.
Scent, sight,
sound,
and smell.
Sound is the third one.
The third S.
Yes. But we'll work through that, and I will do the snake avoidance training, most likely with a bull snake when I catch one sometime this summer, and we'll show everybody how to do that. Now, last thing I want to touch on with this, my brain, sorry. GSP pup. That is one thing that I want to make sure that
and that actually ties in with this question that also had to do with snake avoidance. Completely different person, J Mill 28. Can you discuss your thoughts on rattlesnake avoidance training? Do you do the traditional method of collar stimulation in the presence of a rattlesnake, or do you do something else that you find that works well for your dogs? Also, do you think a 3 to 4 month old would be okay for this little guy that's going to be out in the sage and rocky foothills in the mountains of Idaho? So this is talking about puppy, also talking about puppy.
Awesome. No, do not do it. They need to have a firm understanding of collar conditioning before you start lighting them up with the collar. It is avoidance training. It is breaking training. You want them to understand snakes are bad. But if they don't understand the collar, you can borderline ruin them from being able to properly be collar conditioned later. So
we've actually run into that before.
Firsthand, with
a dog that has had, as a puppy, rattlesnake avoidance class, no collar conditioning, then just putting the collar on them, they very much freaked out.
Not a good thing. So make sure they're collar conditioned first. Also, big proponent of the vaccination. That'll be another thing that our dogs are getting prior to that. It's a 6-month deal. You need 2 rounds, plan accordingly. They're 1 month apart, and then boosted every 6 months or 12 months, depending on how active the snakes are in your area. So great questions. Let's move on.